Okay, welcome back, folks, to Peeling Syd Barrett. I thought I was done, but I came across something that I think needs to be brought up. It does seemingly validate some of the questions I had about the song Baby Lemonade, and so in a way, it's a correction. In a way, I just want to kind of expand on that topic really quick. This won't be very long, and explain kind of what I found. And if I find things in the future, I reserve the right to come back and do more episodes, whatever, just to kind of explain my thinking. And you can go along with that and see if you agree or if it's interesting or whatever. So I was kind of browsing through things and I found a website called sydbarrett.com. Go figure, right? But it appears that some of his family members actually have some input into that website. I think his brother-in-law maybe perhaps has some kind of input on there. So they mentioned that there were some items that were going to be up for bid by Mr. Barrett. And I was very upset that previously I had not been aware that this was happening. This is all done through Cheffins or Cheffins. I'm not sure exactly how to say it. I assume it's Cheffins. I'll put it up here. They're kind of a very traditional, and they have quite a bit of time in on auctioning. So they do fine art items and very many different types of items. At any rate, on the 28th of October, so that's this Thursday coming up, they're going to be auctioning 6 lots that have something to do with Mr. Barrett. One of the items is his 12-string guitar that he discusses with Mick Rock in one of his last interviews, I believe. And I suspect that'll probably go for the most money. There are a few other items, including a photograph. There is a watercolor that Mr. Barrett made, and I'm very interested in that. I'm telling you folks this because I don't expect to have enough money to actually win any of these auctions. So I'm going to explain the significance of the watercolor in hopes that if someone does bid on this and win it, that they'll understand the importance of that watercolor and that they will possibly be willing to let other people see it, because I really think it's important for people to see it and understand how all of these things tie together. Because in my opinion, more so now than ever, Mr. Barrett was a complete artist, not just with poetry, which I think he's exceptional with, but also he's formulating ideas visually with art, and he's also writing music for it. So wonderful, wonderful kind of a concept, and not out of the ordinary. I think a lot of people that are interested in making music also are interested in making art. But the extent to which he has gone and the beauty behind what he's made and the significance of these things in his life, I think are worth talking about, so that people don't just kind of brush them off as not being worthwhile of consideration. So let's discuss 2 things. So the first is obviously the guitar, which I suspect will sell for quite a bit more than what they're listing. They're currently listing it at like £6,000 to £10,000, which I'm sure will go much more than that. Now, if you have been following along with the Did Syd series, of course, a number of my Did Syd questions are, did Mr. Barrett help people? Was he writing music with them? Was he putting out music through other bands? Was he helping other bands make music? Was he helping other people make music? And if so, then this is probably the guitar that he was using to put together that music. Just my opinion, there's no way of validating that, but it seems logical. That's the guitar he had. It seemed to be the one that he liked the most towards the end of his known career. And it's just an old 12-string Yamaha guitar, and I don't know that he's done anything with it, but and I don't have anything to do with Cheffins or the family or anything else. I have nothing in this other than I want people to know about these things because they're things that would have been important to me. Okay, so basically 28th of October 21, there are lots. If you want to look at the lots, it's lots 192 through lots 197. There are some smaller things and some larger things. Now, I really, really need to discuss this watercolor because it's one of the last known works of art that Mr. Barrett worked on. This is significant, of course, for a number of reasons. I'll explain why. Now, Van Gogh is known for making wheat filled with crows towards the end of his life. Some people think that that's his last painting, but most people that have studied Van Gogh do not believe that that's his last painting. But almost everyone agrees that it's a very significant painting because he seems to be examining his life with this painting. He seems to be examining the end of his career, the end of his life, with this wheat field with crows, thus the stormy skies. And of course, Van Gogh struggled with mental health for a very, very long time. And I haven't really revealed this to very many folks, but I have had in the past a number of epileptic episodes, and it's very strange. I don't know that Van Gogh was going through something like that, but I know what it's like for me. And this has happened to me maybe 8 to 10 times in my life, which thankfully hasn't been happening so much anymore. It's something that kind of started when I was a teenager. It was quite scary, and it would happen to me every couple years or so. And it's very difficult to explain the sensation, but your body, in particular your mind, seems to be weirding out. You feel like a storm is approaching, and then you experience a seizure, and when you wake up, often, for me anyway, I would wake up sometimes totally blank and lost at first, and then sometimes I would experience some very strange forms of dreams. And for me, the last time that happened is when I wrote that song, The Iliad of Syd. I'll link that if you want. But for whatever reason, that kind of visual was happening within my brain at the time, and that's when I made that song. The point is that the storm clouds that seem to be approaching for Mr. Van Gogh in that painting seem to be relaying kind of a concern with a point in time in his life which may be ending, and thus the crows. Of course, a group of crows could represent a murder. A group of crows is called a murder, and some people believe that Mr. Van Gogh was murdered by someone else or by a group of boys. Perhaps there was an argument or something like that. I will point out, for most people that consider themselves to be Catholic, suicide is a form of murder, and so it's not acceptable. And perhaps if Mr. Van Gogh actually did commit suicide, then that would be why there's a reference to murder, because he's struggling with that. Notice that there are 3 paths through the field, and the number 3 is exceptional because it can relate to so many things. Of course, you have the fates, ancient mythological terms that are tied to the 3. Of course, that could represent the here and now, the present. It can represent the future, and it can represent the past. Of course, it can also represent much more difficult things, such as living an earthly life versus being in hell or being in heaven. All those things can be corresponded to the number 3, the 3 paths that seem to be walked. And you'll notice that in Van Gogh's painting, there is one path right down the middle of the painting, which seems to be heading towards the crows. In that way, it may be a very, very significant point of decision-making or a reflectionary point in Mr. Van Gogh's life that is relayed within that painting, and for that reason, it is extremely important. Okay, so I've gone on enough about Mr. Van Gogh and the nature of that painting. What I would like to point out to you is that Mr. Barrett, one of the last known works of art that he made was this watercolor. And I'm going to try and bid on this, so please wish me luck. It would mean a lot to me to get it, and to get it at a cost that isn't too high, because I really can't go very high on things. And it is only a watercolor, which usually doesn't sell for a whole lot because they don't last very long. They're not very durable, and also they're considered to be of less value because they don't require the time and have the staying power that an oil has. But I'll explain to you really quickly why a watercolor could be very, very important here. First, a watercolor has to be done correctly. It can't be reworked. It has to be done correctly. You can do some layering, but it's minimal. And the mixing of colors and other effects are very significant in a watercolor. For that reason, the delicate nature of piecing together a watercolor in many ways requires much more, I guess I would say, ability and talent and foresight in developing a work of art than an oil painting does, in my opinion. The second reason why a watercolor is important here is because a watercolor is extremely unassuming. And in many ways, Mr. Barrett is also very unassuming. So it's capturing the soul of the man with what many people would overlook as being unassuming and uncomplicated. But this is, in fact, a very wonderful and complicated painting. Okay, we already did Peeling Syd Barrett, Baby Lemonade. We mentioned that there may be a painting of lemonades, and I found it. It is this. And what do you know? I'll show you the lemons on the table, which of course we could understand to reference to a specific person, and on the table are two bottles. Two. In other words, it's a meeting of people. It's implied by the number two of bottles. And of course, the lemons reference possibility of lemonade. This tying together of music and art is absolutely intrinsic to the understanding of Mr. Barrett. If you want to try and understand the nature of how he's pulling together other ideas and infusing them within one another. So for that reason, in my opinion, now this is just one take on it. I'm not saying that it's definite that that's what's happening here. But if this is his last work of art, and I refuse to believe that he didn't know that he was ill and getting old and wasn't going to be living much longer, he may be referencing the beauty of a relationship, a very specific relationship that is his primary driver in life, reflexively, the same way Van Gogh is pointing to a very, very defining moment in his life. Perhaps Mr. Van Gogh had realized that this is one of the things that perplexes people so much about Van Gogh is how could he finally be breaking through and then come to this decision to commit suicide, which is very perplexing, and I'll say it's perplexing to me as well. It seems that perhaps he thought that that was an avenue out of escaping from the storm. I don't know. Here is the opposite reference of a person who is nearing the end of their life, who views it beautifully. Notice that the two bottles are capped, so it's very likely that they still hold liquid. It's hopeful of the future. The lemons haven't been used yet, so the lemonade reference is implied, but really what this may be referencing is a very, very, I guess you could say, idealistic version of a possibility of another life that's being expressed with a specific someone in the future. That's one possibility of reading it. I'll just point that out. And I'll point out also that it explains the lyrics to so many songs, like, doing everything to try and impress someone, everything I did for you, etc. A song like Dolly Rocker, which obviously states that these things are being done for someone else's benefit. A song like Birdie Hop, where Mr. Barrett expresses the desire to be, I guess you could say, impressing someone or going out and experiencing these things, trying to be great in honor of someone else. In this painting here is implied the same relationship of trying to fulfill, I guess you could say, the totality of a relationship, and doing so in a hopeful and looking towards the future kind of a way. And I'll present you with one of the tarot cards here, which is known for its symbolism of some cups being half full, some being empty, some being full, and the person kind of viewing the world in that way. I just want to point out how very, very hopeful this is, that towards the end of Mr. Barrett's life, he makes a painting that's full, the lemons are full, the bottles appear to be full, and so perhaps he was able to experience and enjoy life in a relationship that was fully developed. And I just want to point out, in my opinion, this is the nature of someone who is a very progressive, positive person that they live through difficulties, they come out the other side better for it, and they're able to create beautiful art out of their life, out of their experiences, to tie that all together and to not go sour, but to make really beautiful things in life, not become vinegar, but to become wine. And in this way, I believe Mr. Barrett has shown that he has come to, I guess you could say, come to grips with the totality of his life, and he's peaceful with it, he's happy with it. He's decided that perhaps he's fully satisfied and has accomplished what he needs to accomplish, and it's all expressed within this one watercolor, this one wonderful watercolor. I haven't even discussed, the coloration of the bottles, which is really beautiful, this kind of fluorescent green coloration that he has on the bottles. I don't know. I guess wish me luck. I really hope I can win this auction for this watercolor. And I guess that's it. I wanted to make sure I covered the idea that are presented within Mr. Barrett's art. I'll just point out one more thing, that there was an oil painting of orange dahlias, I believe he made, which is extremely similar to Piet Mondrian's work of a red dahlia. I'll put them up here. And this is important, of course, because as we did Syd Barrett more, of course, Storm Thurgeson supposedly devised these covers. I just want to point out that there is an indicator again that Mr. Barrett may have been interested in Piet Mondrian's work, and the use of the windmill and the strange coloring is extremely reflective of Piet Mondrian. So we have a connection there that is reasonable for someone who's experienced in art, and I don't know, perhaps people don't recognize it, or perhaps no one bothers to explain it. But again, a very interesting connection. So that's pretty much it. This is just a short one. I wanted to make sure that these things were clear, and I really feel more strongly than ever now that Mr. Barrett was tying together all these things from the background, and the watercolor itself is indicative of the song Baby Lemonade. I'm a little bit sad that you have these different areas of art that don't seem to respect one another, like rock music and art, traditional artwork like oil painting. But Mr. Barrett's pulling them all together in his lifetime, and he's making them all wonderful. And I think he's succeeding in all these different areas and pulling them together, as you would expect a Renaissance man to do, a true genius to do, and so, or an enlightened man. And I'm not saying necessarily that Mr. Barrett was always a great man. Every person has their flaws, but certainly a wonderful, wonderful artist and a wonderful mind. And I suppose that's pretty much it. Take care, and hopefully I'll talk with you folks again later.